thank you to UAS for organising this panel today, where we're going to talk about charter. We're going to talk about the business jet charter market, the environment, the operators, the brokers, the customer outlook. And I've got a fantastic panel here. We're going to pass the mic across to introduce the panelists and to talk about the various issues. But rather than introducing one by one, I'm going to start with an operator, and we've got two operators here. I'm going to start with George, if I may. George Galanopoulos, who's obviously been in the industry a long while, needs no introduction, but clearly now plays a key role at Luxaviation. And George, I'm going to introduce the first kind of theme we're going to discuss, which is what do we see in the charter business in Europe, or perhaps rather widely EMEA region, in 2023, as we're now putting the pandemic in the rearview mirror?
Well, thank you, Richard. I think if we go back to 2022, we can all agree we had an amazing year. In the 30 years I've been in the business, probably the best year ever. And naturally, the expectations have risen. So we started 2023, we're all hoping it's going to be another 2022 or better. The reality is that the business have dropped, the inquiries have dropped, as you know, from your own company. And we're at a point now where we closed the first quarter, I would say significantly down from 2022, but the inquiries are start coming in, and the summer looks pretty promising.
So if this was, if the pandemic had never happened, and this year was following 2019, so it was just a sequence from 2019 to 2023, would you think that this was going to be a bumper year, or just a sort of modest growth year on 2019?
I would say we're somewhere in the middle. It wouldn't be a bumper year, but it would certainly be up from 2019.
Okay, that's a very interesting intro. So that's the view from a very large, a world-leading aircraft management company. If I can move Julie Black to you, and the view from Hunt and Palmer, and that's obviously with an international broker's perspective on the charter market, and not just across private jets, of course, but all kinds of aircraft. How do you see the post-pandemic EMEA market?
As you say, we have an interesting spread of business in our group, so we have a much wider viewpoint on that kind of question. So we have a global executive charter team, we have a music touring specialist team, we have also cargo and commercial. And each one of those areas has its own nuances and is affected in very different ways. So our executive business has come back very strong. We've had an incredibly strong Q1 this year and hoping it will continue throughout the summer. And the music touring business is growing massively again. You know, we've all been fun-starved over the pandemic, so everybody wants to come back and go and do great stuff and go see shows. So there's not enough planes, there's not enough venues, there's not enough anything to fulfill the music touring need. The cargo guys have had a big drop-off, which I think is something that's being experienced around the industry. You know, the COVID boom of shifting PPE and freight that can't get on ships and all of that has now gone away. So cargo's now had a little drop-off, and commercial can't find capacity anywhere because there's no ad hoc charter lift compared to what there was years and years ago. So across the business is a very interesting kind of picture that we're seeing.
Okay, well, it's interesting. Thank you, Julia. It's interesting that you pointed out that the executive part is very strong, because if I can bring Doug, you into the conversation, Doug Gollan, who's founder of Private Jet Card Comparisons, you've obviously got a very strong US view. You're talking and surveying customers in that executive part of the business, which Julie mentioned. What impression are you getting from them on the charter market in 2023?
Well, I think, it's no secret that the rates, the prices have gone up significantly. And so, and tracking from WingX, obviously the volume is down. And what I'm hearing directly when I talk to subscribers is they have sort of an annual budget in mind. So whether it's $250,000 or $300,000, and what they're doing is maybe consolidating the number of trips that they're taking. If they previously had gone to their home in Florida every weekend. You know, the one thing I think we learned from COVID is you could work anywhere. And so now maybe they're staying down for a couple weeks instead of going down, you know, coming back up on a Monday morning, and the same with the skis. So I don't think they've cut back in how much they're spending. They've cut back in the number of trips they've made. And then I think, you know, some of the people who jumped into private aviation because of COVID, they're still there, but they're also now making it more for like the special occasion because the airlines are back. But where I'm seeing new people still entering the market is in the US. You know, the airlines all operate on the hubs and the spokes. And, you know, I live in Miami. If you're in a big city, you can still fly nonstop anywhere. But if you're in a spoke city and you have business to do in a spoke city, it's, you know, if your flight gets canceled or you miss your connection, it's not, you know, 2 hours later, it's 2 days later. And so I'm still seeing people who have business or, you know, they make a connection to their vacation home. Those people are going to private aviation because the commercial airlines still aren't getting it done in the spoke markets if you have to, you know, live on connections.
Yeah, one of the questions that you ask your customers, I noticed, is are you going to fly more in the next 12 months, the next 6 months?
Yeah, 12 months.
What's the latest view you've got there?
So the latest survey I did, which was from last September, August and September, is something like 95% of the people who had started after COVID said we're continuing. But the percentage that said I'm going to fly privately on a regular basis, those people dropped from about 60% to 40%. So, you know, they you know, they're addicted. You know, they like the private aviation. I think one of the places or two of the places that people tell me that they're definitely using private aviation when they're traveling with the family, especially if they have young kids, and then also when they're traveling with pets. But you hear more of, well, when it's just me and I don't have luggage to check, you know, they're willing to go back onto the airlines, at least, you know, until the prices start coming down.
Thank you, Doug. And I mean, and Gus, if I can come to more of a, I guess, a UK view, although obviously your business portfolio stretches beyond the UK. At Centreline, you've got a number of different businesses. I mean, to some extent, you're a boutique business that you don't have necessarily the scale of a Luxaviation, but you're not just in the charter business, are you? So you're not. If charter's coming back down, you probably have got somewhat of a hedge with the other businesses in the portfolio.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, firstly, I'd endorse everything that's been said already by the panel. We've had a strong start to this year, and the broader trends fully support what Julie and George have already said. You're right that we've taken a view that a relatively small AOC operation. So we've diversified into, we have a Part 145 business, we have an aeromedical capability, parts supply. So the AOC has become a relatively small part of the operation, and we believe that I think for a smaller AOC operator, the secret is going to be around identifying an aircraft type or two possibly, and then sticking to it. I think the days of having 6 or 7 different types on a 12 aircraft AOC are long gone. And I think for us, the target for that will be the 550, so the legacy 500 Praetor 600 within the next 12 months. I think if you speak to our charter team, the main trend in the UK is the complete absence of light jets now. We found that trips which 2 or 3 years ago would have been a CJ2 Plus trip, we're now doing on the legacy 500. Which, again, if you'd gone back in time a little bit, I probably wouldn't have believed that 2 years ago, but that's very much the way it's gone. I mean, we disposed of our own light jets the last 2 last year because the used value of those aircraft at the moment, particularly in the US, is ridiculous, frankly. So if you're holding dollar-denominated assets and you're a UK company, it's obviously a great time to get rid of them, so that's what we've done.
And is that reflecting a different kind of customer emerging from the pandemic years with a different sort of trip demand?
Not really. We're seeing a lot. There are new customers, but I'd say it's a lot of the same customers. No, there we go. We're back. Same customers flying on bigger aircraft, I would say.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you, Gus. And Ammar, if I can bring you into the conversation, Ammar and Mahmoud from UAS, could we ask? I mean, first of all, we've been talking, I think, around Europe, around the US market that Doug knows very well. Can we talk a little bit about the Middle East market, which obviously you know very well, and the charter business in the Middle East? How do you see that in 2023?
Actually, the Middle East business is a little bit different. It has a special, way of dealing with the charter, because the number of clients we have is very limited, and the type of clients, VIPs, is most of the time they are like a government or a princess or like royal families. So we don't have this type of business trips in the Middle East, unless it is an oil company or like medical, like high medical, teams. The problem is the business has really dropped after COVID. And 2022, last year it was really picking up very good. This year we found that the business go back down. The reason is we have no aircraft available in the market. We have no sources. It's really we have few operators who are leaving their aircraft in Middle East. Rest of them is just passing by and go. It's hard to find an aircraft now. If you need to fly from Dubai tomorrow to London, most probably will have no availability. Most of the operators which used to be in the Middle East, especially in Dubai and Saudi, they disappeared after COVID. Most of them, they lost their license or they sell their aircraft. So we are running out of choices. And the trip which we used to do, for example, for a BBJ from Dubai to London or from Riyadh to London, we used to do it 180,000 on a BBJ or ACJ. Now the prices became so much high. It's 240, 260 for the same trip. The reason is the few operators which we have, they increase their prices because there is no competition. And the European operators, they need to bring their aircraft and reposition. It will cost double the price. So the situation is really not healthy in the Middle East for the time being. And I've spoken to many operators here to convince them, bring some business, some aircraft. You will get a lot of business here in the Middle East. And we hope that this will change in 2023. We have many promises, but I think if no one is willing to invest in the Middle East, that situation is going to be worse in private jet segment.
That's very useful and great that George is sitting right next to you, because of course you've got a few aircraft available to position in the Middle East. Is it a market, George, that Luxaviation is interested in, particularly the charter business, which seems to be undersupplied?
Well, our current business model is aircraft management and charter on the back of that. So we've gone away from owning our own aeroplanes. Because frankly, in the many years I've been in the business, I cannot make it pay. I don't know how people do. Owning an aeroplane as an operator and actually make money out of it. So because we manage aircraft, it's very difficult for us to position them what we want them to be. It's down to the owner. So yeah, very much. I mean, we do have an operation in the Middle East. We go to UAE or C, and I'm pleased to say we are getting more aircraft there. So hopefully we have a bit more capacity. The other thing, of course, is all the charters on privately owned aircraft is subject to owner's release. And frankly, I think we can all agree this will be the biggest challenge in the last couple of years, convincing the owners to take the charters. And going back to the expectations I was saying earlier on, the prices at 2022 are the highest they've ever been. From a broker's point, I think you had quite a hard job to finding an aircraft for the right price. The same owners now expect the same hourly rate in 2023, which is not possible. So it's managing expectations again.
Yeah, actually, one point I want to pick up on. What's happened in terms of the availability of aircraft in a fleet like Luxaviation is clearly during the pandemic, owners wanted to have their aircraft available. less aircraft available for the charter market or less capacity, one of the factors that push prices up. Is that changing post-pandemic? Are the aircraft more available than they were? The owners need the aircraft less, or has that not changed?
At Luxaviation, that hasn't changed. I think we are sitting here today with exactly the same challenges on convincing owners to take a charter. Owners are still using the aircraft as much as they did just after the lockdown, so there's no change there.
Okay, well, I mean, Julia, are you seeing, when we come to this kind of supply-demand balance, are you seeing the 2023 market suffering from your perspective because of lack of quality supply, or is it now more a demand factor slowing the market?
You raise an interesting point there straight away about quality supply, because in every market there is supply, but it's a question of whether you want to engage with some of the market. And I've always felt that the best way to do what we do best is to work with operating partners that we love and trust. So people like Centreline, Luxaviation Group, etc. They're people that we know will back us up when they go AOG. They'll provide well-maintained aeroplanes, professional-looking crew, and they'll do something that reflects well on all of us. Because as a broker, we are nothing without good operating partners. We are just a shop window, a trip manager. Pricing, as you say, is a challenge. If we look now at, I've got certain clients who make the same trip year in, year out, and it's amazing to see the staggering increases in those trips over the last 10 years. And every year you have the same conversation with the clients about, it's all going up a bit now. And then we've touched on the other challenges of owner approval. And nowadays, I think operators are much more wanting to keep their assets for themselves. The owners, want to keep the assets for themselves. Why wouldn't you? You've paid $50 million for an asset. You want to be able to fly it when you want. So it is much harder for us as a broker sometimes to secure good operators, great jets, especially for trips that are farther out. And we're often required to sign up to contracts in advance to get owner approval. And nothing annoys a client more than you say, okay, we need to sign a contract here in order to go for owner approval. So sign a contract, go to the owner, the operator, and the owner says, no, sorry. So you do it again, and you do it again. And in the US market in particular, I can work through 4 or 5 aircraft like that, which is just serial disappointment to the end user. And they can end up being a little bit disillusioned. And this is where the larger kind of operated fleets come into play. This is where those consolidated operators are now finding strength because they're not subject to owner approval. And effectively, you're looking at guaranteed lift. So it's changing the whole market dynamic now.
And the new customer that came in during the pandemic, which gave this great boost to the charter market, took it to the highest ever levels, is that customer willing to pay a higher price to get the kind of quality service you've been describing?
I'd say, like any market, often the new customers come in at the lower level in the market, and they're far more likely to look at smaller aircraft solutions, which is a much more competitive marketplace with a much more diverse range of supply. Trying to be diplomatic here. There's the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I'd always rather work with the good. Sometimes a client will sort of push you, and as a broker, you have to decide, do I want to continue working with this client and be put in this competitive boxing match every single time to go and engage with operators who don't deliver the way we expect? They're shoehorning in 4 or 5 sectors in a day, which causes schedule compromise and duty compromise and aircraft that perhaps aren't getting cleaned on every turnaround. And, customers, they don't want to pay lots of money, but they still want a cheap solution. And we have to have very honest conversations with them and say, you can have this or you can have that. And that is, of course, the broker role, is to educate the end users about what the market's doing and what their choices are. Whether they listen, Richard, we've all been in that position where we've, at the end of a trip, just wanted to turn around and go, I told you so.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know whether you read Doug's surveys, and if you don't, I really recommend it. You do probably, because
they are great reading.
Because Doug is you are asking a lot of those questions, and one thing I noticed is, the interesting response you get on customers that have been disappointed, increasingly disappointed, because the charter market has just been overstretched. And can you tell us more about what those customers are doing in terms of moving to a different kind of product?
Well, I think, it's very interesting because I always say that Jetcards are scalable charter. It's a mid-sized jet is a mid-sized jet. Or super mid, you could get a Citation 10 or a Challenger 350. There are very few programs that are aircraft specific, but it's one of those things that they put the money in, and if you have $250,000 on account, you take those spur of the moment trips because 24 or 48 or 96 hours you call up and you book, or they know that the cancellation policy is also 24 or 96 hours. So I booked the trip down to Florida 2 weeks ago. I look at the weather and it's raining. It's 48 hours out. I can cancel without a problem. But you're giving up some of what you get, the personalized service with a broker about the specific aircraft type. If you want a Challenger 350 that's not more than 7 years old and you want to have a divan in the back so you can take a nap, it's harder to get that in the jet card market, but it's convenience. And so these are busy people. They're going from meetings to meetings, or maybe they're out playing golf, and then they come back and either themselves or their assistant goes back and they look at the quotes that you sent them 2 days ago, and none of them are valid anymore. And so, what I find is, I always say it's like cars in a driveway. Most people have more than one solution. So, they have the broker they were using, maybe they have a card, but they still have a relationship with the broker. Or even with fractional ownership. Fractional works very well in the aircraft type that you buy, but when you're upgrading and downgrading, the interchange fees, once they get smart to that, they're like, oh, well, maybe I should just call my broker when I need a light jet because, it doesn't make sense to pay the share of the your super mid, pay your monthly management fee for the super mid, and the only deal you get, when you use the hours is a slightly lower hourly rate. So I think, it really depends. Everybody is different. What you're talking about with the floating fleets, Vista and, Wheels Up are in the news, but, the reason people choose them isn't necessarily the marketing buzz. They have unique products. If you're traveling, globally, and you need access on 48 hours notice to go from continent to continent, but you don't want to own a plane, and you don't want to make the 5-year commitment, that the share companies need, or, and sometimes now there's a wait for different types of planes, it's a fantastic program where you can buy 50 or 100 hours, and we're on a Wednesday. You could say Saturday I want to go from Geneva to Johannesburg, right? And then tomorrow you can call up and cancel it. And so there aren't a lot of products like that in the market. And I think that's the thing people miss is the wealthy person buys into these programs because they're offering something the market hadn't offered before. And then I think everyone, the stuff that gets the attention is how much money is at stake. And if you look at like the Vista client, they say their clients have a net worth of over $100 million. And so someone who's spending $1 million a year, they're not laying out 3 years. They're paying either annually, or a lot of them are paying quarterly. So $250,000 to somebody who's worth $100 million, that's like the average American household's $120,000 net worth. That's like losing $200 on an airline ticket. So, there's all this stuff about the risk and things, but they're providing a product that other people don't do. And for the very wealthy person, they don't want to lose the money, but it's like, what else am I going to do? If you book a regular charter contract and then you want to call up 48 hours, before to cancel your flight to Hong Kong, you lost a big chunk of money. So I think it's an interesting time in the market.
I mean, if we were to look, your customer set, 2023 versus 2019, in terms of the product take across spot market charter or ad hoc charter, some sort of card commitment, fractional program, How would the two characters, 2019 and 2023, contrast, or would they be really the same?
Well, fractional went through the roof, obviously, because all of the card programs that were guaranteed, they started changing their terms and they added blackout days and peak days and surcharges. And, if you needed that flexibility, where you wanted to book or cancel, 6 hours before your flight, then you had to go all in for 5 hours or 5 years with like a NetJets or a FlexJet. And, they only had the 10 peak days, or, Vista, the program, I think it's 20 peak days. And so, NetJets has a backlog of fractional orders, right? Backed by deposits that go into 2024, and they're sort of sold out. And so now it's going back a little bit because the prices are coming down. It's not necessarily that the Jetcards are bringing down their hourly rates, although some are. But now, it's back to, let's make a deal. Okay, if you buy 25 hours, you get a bonus hour or 2 hours or flight credits and things like that. So now that people, I always say it's like dating versus marriage. A Jetcard is, you're 25 hours at a time versus, fractional, or you own a plane. It's, you're in the deep end of the pool. And so, as the terms are relaxing and all of a sudden all the card companies are going from 60 or 80 peak days back down to 50 or 40 people. And, you can't get a delivery of your fractional share for 12 months, or, what are the backlogs with the OEMs now? So people are going back to their brokers and they're going back and saying, okay, I'll buy 50 hours or $200,000. So it's like everything, it ebbs and flows, and, people panic as it shifts one way. And, for a while people are saying, is there a future for fractional? And then the fractionals had a great run. And so now I think it's back to, more balance towards the Jetcards and back to the broker, because, hey, listen, my broker who couldn't get me quality airplanes and the prices were through the roof a year ago, now you have better deals and the quality airplanes are back and available to some degree.
I mean, that's an interesting mobility across products. I mean, Gus, in your business, obviously you've got the charter business, and then you've got the other parts of the business, particularly the maintenance and the aircraft management. To what extent is the charter customer also the customer that will feed the other parts of your business?
Almost never, actually. That's an interesting question. I mean, there certainly is a bit of crossover in people that are trading up aircraft who are owner flyers, who perhaps start off on a Cirrus and then buy a Vision Jet and then look to charter, once they've experienced using the aircraft. But I think really they tend to be fairly siloed. We don't really deal with people on as charter clients who then go on to indulge in one of the other parts of the business. The only area where I'd say, there are two distinct areas where we do get some crossover. One is in aircraft sales. We have a very successful, I'm going to mention it because I think Jasmine sat there, aircraft sales brokerage. And certainly management clients who are either trading up or decide to get out of ownership. Certainly that's a route. And the other one is started to become, I think since the pandemic a little bit, on aeromedical. So we've got a couple of management clients at the moment who were very clear that they come to us because we have an aeromedical capability. So for instance, we can, if they have particular requirement on a mission, we can put a paramedic on the aircraft, which obviously most operators can't do.
I'm going to turn now, as we've only got a few minutes left, to slightly longer view, maybe 2, 3, 4 years ahead. Because I'd like to know if you think from your business's perspective, we're going to see a genuinely different type of charter market in the future, or whether we've just had this kind of 2-year experience, this kind of roller coaster, and then things are back to normal. Ammar, if I can ask you first and just kind of slant it this way. If the charter market, doesn't work out to be hugely different than it was before, and let's say, as you were saying, there are capacity issues which kind of frustrate it in the Middle East, do you see the rest of the market, your other customers, your aircraft owners in particular, is that sufficient for the business to just do well? Is charter a bit of a sideshow?
Actually, comparing to the fact which we are here, there are no new product, no new operator in the Middle East. So I think the situation will remain the same, if not worse. Many of my clients, when they need to book a flight maybe next week, either the price are double than what they used to pay, or there's no availability. This is most of the cases, so they end up flying commercial. So the situation is really critical in the Middle East. We really have a big shortage in capacity. The situation is not healthy unless some new operator appears in the horizon. So otherwise, I think it's going back to a very bad ending. It's you cannot trust owner aircrafts. You cannot trust even the floating schedule. They come back last minute. Oh, we have an issue. We have an AOG. You need to delay your aircraft, your trip with next day or 3 hours, 4 hours. So we had many disappointed clients, and which they decided, to cancel flying private because it's not helping their meeting. They have to cancel their meeting. They have to cancel their plans. They find out that commercial air flying is much more convenient for them. So for the time being, I think the market need to recover first, and then we will see a new future on the market in the Middle East market. I mean, because it's really a sad situation that we have a confirmed flight, and you end up with no availability, or the owners they choose they need a flight to the States from Middle East, or like $200,000 revenue. They will not give you $70,000. They say, oh no, we cannot. The owner said no, because they need more money, more longer sectors. So the situation is really critical in the Middle East, unless something really huge happen.
Complicated business. I mean, George, we've been here before over the years. I mean, the charter market in 24-25, is it going to resemble more towards 2019 or 2022?
Well, I'll go back a bit, Richard. I'll say the charter market will continue to grow, in my opinion, worldwide. We're going to see, and we're seeing already, new clientele. The typical client is mid-60s, made some money, and he wants a comfortable life. It's not really the typical client anymore. We get YouTubers, influencers, people actually, they're not ashamed to be seen on a jet. I get inquiries from people say, can I take photographs on a jet, please? Go out to put all over the social media. These people are becoming increasingly wealthy, and they will be our future clients. So definitely the market will continue to grow. One big challenge there, we all be discussing it for the last 2 days, is sustainability. And I really believe as an industry we're late. We should have gone on it 2 or 3 years ago. We left it too late. We're still not doing enough to raise our profile, to actually tell people what we're doing. We're doing an awful lot as an industry. There's a lot of industries there that still do nothing. So that's our biggest challenge. But apart from that, the charter market will continue to grow. I'm very confident on that.
Thank you, George. And Julia, you've been talking about, I know yesterday and today and from ACA, the importance of quality operators. 2 years from now, do you think that there are going to be fewer charter operators, higher quality, or do you think you'll still face the challenge of a highly fragmented variable market?
That's a very interesting question, and I wish I had polished up my crystal ball when I got out of bed this morning, because it's still looking a little cloudy. The one thing I do know about this industry is it's kind of cyclical. And if you look back at some of the big brand operators that are here now, they've all been through these cycles where they had like huge managed fleets, and then they shrunk, and now they're growing again. So clearly there is some buoyancy in our market. The consolidation factor that's going on, everyone, joining forces, creating these big fleets in order to optimize, etc. Those work to a certain extent. As a charter broker, I feel that it strips the personality from it a little bit. For me, we have to remember we're still dealing with intensely personal transactions. You know, people, whether the end user is traveling, whether for business, for a movie promo, for a music tour, for a family occasion, it's an intensely personal thing, that flight. And it's, whilst homogenization is a good thing, we risk sometimes depersonalizing it a little bit. And I'd like to see operators retaining their identity, remaining their individuality. I think that's really important because that's something that as a broker we sell. And that's the kind of thing that keeps people coming back to what we do, which is an amazing and buoyant industry, and we are so lucky. And I just want to address a little bit of what Georgia said about sustainability. And I do agree that, obviously we have to be better as an industry about messaging that. But I also, my note of caution, if you like, is that the people that jet bash and the people that chain themselves to aeroplanes here this week are never going to be won, genuinely. Business aviation remains a vital tool. Aviation generally remains a vital tool to keep our world connected, etc. But we're fighting an unwinnable PR battle, in my opinion. So we need to concentrate on our relationships with our clients, with our end users. My clients include other brokers, other operators in other parts of the world, as well as end users and corporations. And we've got to keep delivering a good job to them so that they keep referring people back to us, and we can keep amazing operators in business and keep that great cycle of life going. Because, it's an amazing business to work in, and I'm privileged to sit here with all of you today.
Yeah, well, that's an upside to finish on. I mean, I know, Ilham, you've been waving to me to say I should wind up. Are we out of time? We're out of time. Do we have time for any questions? Or if anyone's got a question, I've got a mic. If there's no question, I'm going to just ask actually one further question for you, Doug, if I may, because you're so close to the customers, and I'm interested because in our little team we're often thinking, okay, how much of this is cyclical? How much is secular? Is there a genuine sort of change in this market that's taken place? Could you kind of put your finger? Maybe it's a tough question, but on any feedback you've got from your customers, which suggests to you this is genuinely a new market we're looking at now, rather than just business as usual from 2019.
Well, I would say that it's a market that's grown. I think it may continue to slide back a little bit, but I just think talking a little bit about what we've been talking about for this whole time. What's ahead. I think for the professional charter broker, the best is yet to come. And so the cards are scalable, right? It's like, Four Seasons or Ritz-Carltons or Hilton hotels. You know what you're going to get. But, everyone keeps talking about like the digital broker, right? All of this technology. And my background is from the travel industry. And if you look back in 1998, Bill Gates said, you can throw away your travel agent's card. Expedia and Travelocity are here. And, they're huge companies. But the place that the travel agents, or they call themselves travel advisors, the place that they're beating the technology every time is in the luxury segment. And it's because that high-end customer wants the personalized service. A lot of the people I talk to, they don't know the difference between a mid-size and a super mid-size. And, they talk about a stand-up cabin, but they don't know what type of aircraft they were in 2 weeks ago. And so for the person, the broker, who understands the product and understands the customer, they have a very strong future. No app is going to be able to do that. And then the cards are convenient. So I think the industry is just going to go from strength to strength. It's like everything, the travel industry is one crisis after another, right? And so there'll always be some headwinds, but I'm very optimistic. And I think, the consumers who got into private aviation because of COVID, they liked what they saw. They realized, when I travel with my family, when I travel with my pets, how convenient it is. And so I think, it's just for the whole industry, to keep looking forward and, try not to listen to the noise. I think one of the things that, the industry can talk more about is, how much these people, when they travel on the private jets, bring into the local economies. And there's some from research I did about 10, 12 years ago. If you put it in today's dollars, the average spend when a private jet comes to a destination is over $80,000. And so, they say, well, on a per seat basis, carbon emissions, on a per seat basis or a per plane basis, one private jet is bringing as much revenue to a place as a 737. So this industry is a fabulous industry with great people, and, just have to keep looking straight ahead and keep moving forward.
Fantastic. We've covered a bunch of stuff, loads of stuff we didn't talk about. Would love to have another hour, but thank you to the panel. Thank you so much. Thanks for your time, and thanks to the audience.